Well, I'm excited today to have Naeem Fazal. Naeem, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm
Yes.
excited to catch up with you and hear what's happening in Charlotte, Mosaic, Charlotte. You've been there now for many years.
Yes.
You sent out a
Yes.
tweet recently I was intrigued by that I wanted to get your thoughts on. I can't remember if you retweeted it or tweeted it yourself, but something like this season gives us a chance to restart. Talk about what you're doing at Mosaic Charlotte. How are you adjusting, innovating in this season?
Oh man. Well, first of all, yeah, thanks for letting me be a part. Uh, I don't know if I tweeted that, but I'll take full credit for it. Full credit for it. No, I did. I did. And yeah, I think it's a great. It is like it's the what's the is it a poem or something? It says, it's the worst of times and the best of times, or best of days, worst of days. I think that's really what I feel, because there's so many uncertainties. There's so many holes in terms of things that are just used to be a certain way and they're not anymore. And so there's just these gaps. But in those gaps, I think it's a great opportunity to really fill them with some innovation, some creativity, and hope, and risk versus disappointment and despair and all that. And especially with church leaders too. Like, I think even with pastors, I mean, me being one, been at Mosaic Charlotte for 15 years now, started it with my wife. And so, you know, again, the loss of like, oh, we can't do what we used to do is turned into a great opportunity to do. We get a chance to do something new.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome. That's
yeah,
great. What are some of the things you've adjusted? I mean, obviously, I assume you've got a lot more happening online.
yeah,
I
oh
know
yeah,
you guys were very involved in Charlotte with supporting, justice
yeah,
in our nation. What are some of the things you guys have been actively doing in this odd season?
yeah. So it started off with us really from I would say the week one. So uh, just to give you the context, we were in a fundraising campaign. Like, we had kicked off a fundraising campaign to raise $1 million the week before.
Oh my goodness.
uh, yeah, we had to shut it down. So here we are, 2020, with just like a lot of people, you know, great hopes, dreams, and so we were going to purchase um, a space, like two different spaces, and upfit one, and it's going to double our landscape, and real estate, I should say, and yeah, so we kicked that off, and then we shut it down. So I was wondering, I started texting some people and wondering, uh, you know, should I abandon the campaign? So because and if you know anything about, campaigns and church leaders here, like, we do all this. There's a lot of there's a on ramp to all of this,
Long
right? So we're
process.
talking about it. We're talking about it, and it's launching, and we're like, and we're not launching.
All right.
Uh, yeah, and so so many things wasted. Like, honestly, I
Yeah.
mean, I guess we can reuse the books and you use the swag and all that, but so week one we went from everybody. The conversation was, how are we going to meet? So the first few weeks all throughout our nation was uh, people were trying to figure out how we're going to meet as a church. Are we going to meet? Are we not going to meet? I mean, I'm texting people. And then I really felt like we needed to change that. And so from day one, we went from talking about meeting to mobilizing. And so I just felt like that need to be the conversation we need to have. So, and the things we need to talk about. So with our staff, I mean, I just, we talked, and I said, hey, listen, we're changing this. We're not going to be focused on meeting. We're going to be focused on mobilizing. What are we going to do to mobilize Mosaic? What does that even look like? And so that's when, our staff, um, and, started just thinking. They're like, okay, so now it's a different kind of room we were in, and in this room we gotta go, we're, you know we're not thinking about, well, this church is meeting and this church is going to try to do this and this church. Like, no, we're just, how do we mobilize? So that led to, okay, let's engage full on online. So our Sunday morning services became the morning show.
Hmm.
So if you go back and check out, and our services, it's me and the camp. So we had two campuses, and the campus pastor there, she and I started this morning show, which basically means we just again try to figure out how can we connect our church to each other and talk to them about what does it look to mobilize. And so the conversation on Sunday mornings, the messages turned into that as well. Like, what do we do? So I went back to what does it mean to live by faith, hope, and love. And so we've had this, and we kind of stole it from Mosaic LA, where we talked about, we want to live by faith, be known by love, be a voice of hope. And so we said, okay, we're going to start with that again. And so on Sunday mornings, we did this morning show where it was very interactive. It was live chatting going on while I was talking. So it was like a studio set kind of
Yeah,
feel.
yeah.
And so here I am talking live, like, hey, so what are they saying in the chat room about my talk? Like, it was very interactive. So we wanted to keep a sense of we are together. We're not a building, we are people. And so that has led us to just create some really cool things where we started doing birthday signs for people. We started reaching out to everybody online. So I started doing this Wednesday night live where I would pray with people. So on Wednesday nights, um, I would call in, like just do some, like people would join my live Instagram and I would just pray with different leaders and pastors and things like that. And spend an hour, and I wanted people to see pastors pray. So I did that for months, took a break for July and August, kind of start back there again in September. So you've got to be a part of that for sure.
It's
Um,
great.
so yeah, things like that. I mean, I can go on and on about some things that we started doing, but I don't know if
I
you
love
want to
it. Well, yeah. Well,
interject here.
tell me more even about the mobilizing. I mean, your church, obviously, yourself as an Arab American, and
Yeah.
then many leaders in your church are people of color. How have you been part of that movement, but with Jesus at the center? Talk about some of that mobilization.
Yeah. There's an organization called Bags of Hope here that we have partnered with. But when this pandemic hit, part of mobilizing was figuring out, okay, what's one of the biggest needs out there? And uh, kids who could not get access to food because schools had shut down. We were trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we do this? So we actually used our budget and changed it to spend money on all the money that we were spending on coffee and lights and just things to do Sunday morning services became like, okay, this is our budget. Like our whole budget became our outreach budget, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so we figured out, and my wife was so, instrumental in this. I mean, she was the reason this actually happened. Is we started really focusing on figuring out how to actually still feed kids weekly. So we were feeding, oh my gosh, 300. We were setting up 300 bags of, call them bags of hope, weekly.
Wow.
Um, and so we mobilize families. We throw parties where families could come together and actually come and do a packing party. And then 30 minutes later we clean it up, and then other families would come in and do ministry together and pack up stuff. So we started doing that, and we ended up in doing this mobilizing our people to do that, to do birthday signs, to care for other for people who were sick in our that we knew. Right now in the city, if you drive by, there's certain parts of the city that have signs that just say, "We believe in you. You are not alone. We're praying for
Mm.
you." So the hospitals over here locally have Mosaic signs that says, "We love you, Charlotte. we're praying for you, believing for you.
That's great.
Um, so again, that just became our focus. And then uh, when George Floyd took place and happened, and then kind of opened up, the very important conversation, we were really poised to do that. Partly because we were a Mosaic church, which means like we were intentionally created or started the church to have a very diverse uh, people. And so through relationships, of people who are part of the city. I mean, it started from a conversation, from a text message I got from a guy that said, hey, he was thinking, what if we did a protest and in the city? And so we ended up, it was Wednesday, and then Sunday we pulled it off. And it was the largest protest, the first largest not clergy, but peaceful, uh, Christ-centered uh, protest in the city. I mean, thousands of people came out,
Wow.
and and our kind of motto or theme, or one of our big things of our church is like, uh, we're our mission, our vision, our overall, the reason why we exist is to reclaim the message and the movement of Jesus. And so because of that, we've trying to figure out, okay, what's the pure message, and what's the pure movement of Jesus look like? What's the church, in the purest form look like? What are, fully human, fully alive, fully engaged, fully loving, courageously giving grace and mercy, working for injustice? What does that look like? And then what is the true message of Jesus? And so that has allowed us to kind of have this mantra called hope for all, because the truth is most churches um, um, knowingly or unknowingly uh, communicate and preach a message that says it's hope for some, and it's mostly them, or people who believe like them or look like them or think like them. And so for us, hope for all was a great message. And so we had all the swag, we had all the shirts called hope for all, we'd give these away and all that. So the protest that we did um, ended up where, we had all these different churches and organizations come together, and everybody was wearing a hope for all shirt because we donated.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I was, honored to speak at this rally. And it was so great, Eric. It was so great to be in the center of our city, thousands of people, different people, and speaking, and me being a Pakistani, you know, um, I was in a different space, but a very, uh, very special space to speak into what does it mean to be an advocate for this movement. So,
Yeah. Well, I love it. I mean, I feel like, I heard about it, heard about
yeah,
what was happening in Charlotte, and just was really moved by, like you said, a Christ-centered call to equality and justice. How have you
yeah.
seen this hope for all message engaging with people who thought the church or the message of Jesus was not relevant? Like, are you seeing this approach reaching people that maybe would not have come to faith otherwise?
Yeah, I think so. I think most Christians don't understand sometimes that, um, and I mean, again, I love the church, and when I mean I love the church, I love the evangelical church. Uh, Obviously, we know that that's not the bulk of the church. There's a
Mhm.
whole other church out there. Big church includes Catholics and the church, right?
Yeah.
But I'm learning that even though that the church has evolved, and if you want to call these uh, variations of Protestant movements, and then obviously Catholic and Orthodox, I mean, you know, you could say there are divisions, but there's been an evolution of it as well. But even to this point, as the church message of Jesus seems to be very one of highly insecure people. And here's what I mean by that. It's that sometimes our love for Jesus um, is measured by how much we hate others, or how
Mm,
much we're against other people or beliefs. So it's like, well, if you really love Jesus, you wouldn't allow this and this in your church. If you really were a follower of Jesus, you would stand for this and this and this, or you would
mm,
stand against it. If you really love Jesus, you would know that this is wrong and this, like, so it's interesting, because what that means is that we either communicate a gospel, a message that either God is insecure or his people are insecure. But I was telling my wife this. I said, sometimes it's so frustrating because, you know, my love for you as my wife eh, should not be measured by how much I dislike other women.
right. Right. Yeah.
but somehow I don't know why the church has done this.
Yeah.
Is that the
Yeah.
message has been like, so I think it's a great opportunity for us to uh, to to rewrite that
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
and it's a great way with this justice movement that to for people who really believe in the teachings of Jesus to stand up for what is right and what is
Yeah.
true and
Yeah.
what is pure. Um, and so I think it's a great opportunity.
It's great.
So we've been fully engaged in trying to do that. I don't know if that answers your question,
Yeah.
honestly,
No,
but
it's very helpful. No, I think that's an important part of the season. What have we been doing that's no longer necessary in this new world? But also, what have we been thinking, or what are the blind spots that's keeping us from reaching a post Christian world? This
mhm,
emerging generation, Gen Z, apparently is, only 4% have a biblical worldview. It's
mhm.
25% of the US population. It's the most diverse generation that America's ever had. Like, getting this message right is important to reach the people that are growing up who have just a different view than maybe, again, the blind spots that some of us have grown up with have kept us from seeing. Like, they seem to get a love for all nations in a way that the scriptures teach that sometimes our churches haven't reflected.
Oh, of course, of course, of course. So you were talking about uh, like another book of mine. Are you working on another book? You mentioned one of our conversations, and I was thinking, yeah, there have been several thoughts um, on the idea of what it means to really communicate to the people, the next generation. Like, so my kids, 14 and 16, their view of what Christianity is and should be is very different. And I'm really thankful for that. And it's challenging to go, okay, how do you communicate what the message of Jesus is and who he is and what we're supposed to, what we're called to be in a with a generation that's um, that doesn't really put up with kind of BS in a sense,
Yeah.
or just calls it, or they go, I just don't believe that anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I
Yeah.
don't, and I think it's really great. I think before the generations, but again, I don't know that I can't say all the generations did this, but I would say that I think I think if Christians lean into teaching people how to think instead of telling them what to believe, that's going to be the determining factor of how effective the next church is going to be.
Hmm.
I think if leaders, if we have a history and libraries of profound teachers who tell us exactly what to think or what to believe, and uh, I think that this is an opportunity for the next generation is not wanting that, and and learning the value of wanting to think for themselves. And so I think it's a great opportunity to actually propose or preach or lean into that and help the next generation to think more clearly and deeply about the things and make up their own minds instead of us telling them, no, I got to tell you, this is what you got to believe. And if you don't believe this, then it's over.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's a great opportunity. Um, so
Well, I think what you're pointing out too is, there's a way to disciple someone that's more ready for the real world. Like if you tell a kid this is what you believe, and then they go off to college, then suddenly, well, wait, why do I believe that? But if you can teach them how to think, then they can navigate whatever comes their way. What are some of the ways you're helping your people learn how to, think with the mind of Christ, to understand how the scriptures can apply in this day and age? Like, what are some of the ways you've seen that adjustment in your own style as a church?
yeah, I think one of the things that I've tried to do is to communicate the difference between Jesus and Christ, uh, meaning that Christ is not his last name. So it and in at least the world I've been in the US, there's a lot of focus on Jesus, and and it's, we've heard things about it's all about Jesus and all of that, and I appreciate that, love the songs about it, love t-shirts, all that jazz. But what it does though is focuses on the physical person of Jesus as constructed by us, of who Jesus is and the followers of Jesus. And we've forgotten that he was actually the Christ, which means, like, if you read Paul's writings about the Christ, he talks about that it was in him and through him we were made, that there is a profound part of God that was given to us in the human person, uh, being, and we called him Christ, or we called him Jesus, but he was actually the Christ, which means we were all created. So people who don't look like us or think like us, and they were created by the same God who loves them. So there is a potential of and a God DNA in everything that was ever created. So for us as a church, we've said, can we honor that first? Like honoring the human presence is a big deal. And I think sometimes Christians treat people who are Christians different than people who are not. Like, oh, they're the Hindus, or they're those. It's just there's just it's it's divisive. So for us as a church, we have tried to remember to make sure that it's really about treating and seeing Christ in everyone. Like, I mean, think about it. Like, I mean, when you read passages of Jesus where he's talking about, on the last day, like, he'll have, there are going to be people who will be separated with, and they'll be separated into sheep and goats, and and there'll be people who say, well, I did all this stuff in your name and all that, and he's going to go, well, um, when I was hungry, you didn't feed me. Uh, when I was in prison, you didn't. When I was a stranger, you didn't. And then he says the thing of all things. I mean, he says, and the way you treat the least of these, you treat me. And I think sometimes for us, we forget that. And so at least in Mosaic, we're trying to communicate to people spirituality and being like Jesus is simply how do you treat the least important people in your life? And that's it.
Yeah,
So,
that's good.
and at the end of it, I mean, I don't think Jesus is going to go, well, what do you believe?
Hmm.
I think it's going to be like, how did you live?
Yeah, it's
Because
good.
all those sheep and goats were like, well, we believe this. What are we talking about? We believed all of this. They're like, yeah, I know. That's great. But
This is not how you, well, I love
that's
what
it.
you're pointing out, just this need to, live out our faith in a relationship with Jesus, who is God, right? And to be the little
Right,
Christ around us, and then
right.
knowing that the image of God is in everyone. Well, Naeem, I'm so grateful for all you're doing. And if you want to know more about Naeem, go to mosaicchurch.tv. But thank you so much for what you're doing and for sharing some of what's going on in Mosaic Charlotte with us.
Yeah, man. Of course. Love it. Love it. Thank you for what you're doing, bro.
Uh,
Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
you bet.